This is round 2 of my comparison between the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the S23 Ultra. Do you know what? It's a beautiful day out there. Why don't we go outside? And I wasn't going to bring this up, but there's been a few developments. Out of everything we're talking about today, I feel like it would be irresponsible not to bring this up. As a tech reviewer, I do feel like it's my job really to relate to you exactly what I'm finding with no sugarcoating. And it's not a particularly nice thing to do when I find issues with something that costs so much money. I know how difficult it is sometimes to get one of these devices. The last thing you want to hear is that it has issues. And I do have sympathy with people behind the product as well. I don't care who makes these products, whether Apple, Google, Samsung. There's a lot of people behind these products, and I appreciate that they probably had to make some really tough decisions, to get the product in our hands. Without knowing the details, it's easy for me to say that some of those decisions could be avoided, and we'll talk about some of those later on. But it does kind of annoy me, and I try not to pay attention too much to what other people are doing. I like to do my own thing, but it's impossible to avoid, right? When the huge kind of YouTube channels out there kind of choose to gloss over some of these issues, and I just think it's irresponsible. Which is why I wanted to talk to you candidly today, kind of going a little bit off script here, but you probably know what I'm talking about. I love my gadgets regardless of the brands. I have no strings attached to anyone, right? So I'm just gonna say how it is, being as fair as possible, of course, because there are some amazing things about the iPhone and the S23 Ultra, and as you can expect, one is indeed better than the other in some situations. But before we go on, let me show you this. The iPhone was sitting idle on my desk, charging using a brand new 5-port charger from Ugreen with GaN technology, so a fairly modern and reliable charger. I used different chargers too, by the way, and had a similar result with a completely different brand as well, and it got to about 92% and stopped. I was like, okay, what's going on here? And I got this message. If you remember from round 1 video, I got that same message whilst downloading a few apps on day 1. I was outdoors at the time, which was weird, right? Because it was kind of, cool autumnal weather here in the UK, about 15 degrees Celsius. But I did appreciate that, there was no point getting alarmed on the first day, right? But at the same time, it's been 2 weeks now, and I've had enough of just hearing excuses on YouTube and people trying to apologize on Apple's behalf. This is a flagship device at the end of the day, and when you pay this sort of money, you kind of expect a flawless experience. That's my expectation anyway. I can guarantee that if this was an Android device, we would not be hearing the end of this, right? I am now on iOS 17.0.2, and so far so good. It's only been a day or two since this update, and I charged my iPhone twice since the update, once overnight, last night, and again just now before recording this video. So I'm hoping that whatever the issue was, it was fixed by software update. But in contrast, I've had the S23 Ultra now for 8-9 months now. Not a single time did I get any overheating issues. And this thing charges up pretty quickly as well, right? Which is insane. If any device was overheating, it should be this one. I just thought I'd share this exactly as it happened because, there's a lot out there, a lot of noise, sort of defending Apple or glossing over this issue. But this brings me to a crucial point in this video, which is about iOS and OneUI. Before we go into the new iOS 17 features and how that compares with OneUI, and something that I do before anything else when I set up my new devices is to install my password manager. Whether you're switching phones or upgrading to the new iPhone 15, 1Password will make that process so much smoother. But the main reason I use 1Password is because of their strength in security. 1Password has a unique zero-knowledge approach to security, which makes our accounts virtually impossible to crack. You may have seen some recent news with some password managers out there, which kind of highlights how important it is to give our passwords the security it deserves. I've personally been using 1Password since around 2018, way before I did these videos, and I love how not only does it protect myself and my family, but it alerts me when it discovers that one of our accounts might be at risk. It also identifies whether you're using a weak password or passwords that have already been used. And it's super easy to generate unique and strong passwords, and the best thing for me is you don't have to memorize them. The beauty of 1Password for me though is how it synchronizes across all my devices. Whether I'm on the iPhone, my Mac, my PC, my Android devices, it allows me to sync my favorite passwords even to my watch. 1Password is also the safest way for me to share logins, passwords, credit card information, and any other important information with the people who matter the most to me. It uses biometrics too, so you can use Face ID, Touch ID, even Windows Hello, and your fingerprints to unlock 1Password. Outside of YouTube, I work in the tech industry, and I see pretty much on a daily basis how thousands of bots are trying to break into our systems, and our passwords are one point of entry that we can always improve on, Personally, I like to make it as hard as possible, so using unique and complex passwords without having to remember them is really valuable to me. As you can see in this example here, I don't ever need to even see the password to be protected and log into my online accounts. For an exclusive deal for you, feel free to pause the video here if you're watching from a TV and scan the QR code, or use the link in the description below. Actually, right now, if you switch to 1Password from a competitor, this is like incredible. They'll give you credit for any remaining time that you've got on your current bill. I mean, that's pretty awesome, right? I gotta say, I do like how much easier it is now to customize your iPhone, but I would say, and this may come down to your preference, that when it comes to customization, it's a lot more granular on OneUI. And that's true for Android in general, right? I do think though that Apple has gone a bit further here with this action button, you know? Which is crazy, right? Because this used to be on many Android devices for ages. But what I mean is, you can customize a shortcut to do something quite complex now on the action button. Literally one click to run a shortcut, but not just, you know, open a shortcut, but an action inside a shortcut. So you can get quite deep into, you know, quite complex into what you can do here. One thing that Samsung does better though, is that it lets you customize the side button with a double click to do something. You won't go as deep as running a shortcut or routines, right? But it can take you app to routines. What I'd love to see is actually a merge between the two. In other words, for Samsung to go a bit further into routines and for Apple to let us customize different actions for double tapping it, you know, the thing. You know, or triple tapping it. Actually, why don't we make a deal with Apple here? If this video gets 1,000 likes, this becomes a feature, as if, right? That was just a reminder really to like this video if you're enjoying it. Okay, the action button is really useful. I can see lots of potential here. But when I think about what is useful to me on my day-to-day, I have to think about multitasking, which to me, I think is the key difference between these two systems. Let me show you what I mean. I realized the other day that I do this a lot, and I really wish that this was on the iPhone. This would be amazing on the iPhone. It's such a simple thing as well. Say you're watching a video, for example, and in that video the creator mentions something that, you know, you want to quickly find out what it is, but you don't want to leave the video. You want to, you know, carry on watching whatever it is. I think it's awesome just to be able to, you know, drag the app from the side or whatever, and it might be Chrome, it might be just a note to, you know, take a note or even write a note with the S Pen, of course. There are many useful examples like being on a conference call or even on a phone call and quickly look at a calendar, for example. You know, I use this stuff a lot. These seem to be such an easy thing to implement, and I'm sure if Apple did it, it would look and feel awesome. There's no denying when Apple do something, they actually make it look nice. I think it's just a shame really. Let me know what you think though. If you have an iPhone, would you find it useful to have something like this? Now let's talk about durability, and this is something that's been doing a lot of rounds as well on the internet. You know, there's a lot of videos going viral about people destroying the iPhone. And I'll say straight up, the S23 Ultra is not perfect either. You know, I'm a living proof of that. The curved display is awesome. I love it. You know, it's pretty much what makes the S23 Ultra what it is for me, which is a superb device to hold and use. But I dropped it once, waist high, and you know, sure, it was an unlucky drop, but I did think if this was a flat screen, you know, perhaps it would have been okay. I don't know. When you look at the crack, you know, it cracked right where the curve is. I don't know, I think it could have survived. But when it comes to the 15 Pro Max, again, this feels like it's being glossed over a little bit. Less so on this one in comparison with the overheating issues, because, you know, that video from Jerry Rig Everything went incredibly viral. But it looks like the 15 Pro or even the regular 15 and 15 Plus might be a more durable option. So when my friends say, you know, what's the 15 Pro Max like? So it's okay, as long as you don't sit on it, you'll be fine. Talking about friends, let's go back outside and I can show you something else that you wanted me to test in round 2. Which was call quality. I'm glad you came back alive anyway, because yeah, I don't know if I would survive Ibiza at my age.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to do that again anytime soon.
Have you noticed any difference now that I'm talking without a case, or is it do I sound the same? And it's very windy as well.
Sound the same.
Hold that thought, let me call you back from my S23 Ultra. Hello mate.
Hello.
Hey.
Oh yeah, there's a difference.
Is it different? Louder, quieter?
Yeah. No, it's not there, but you were calling with the iPhone before, is that right?
Yeah, this is now the S23 Ultra, same place, same network, pretty much same time.
Right, okay, so the iPhone is clear and it sounds more natural, like your own voice when I talk to you in person.
Alright mate, thanks for that, that's been really helpful, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, buddy. Please watch it.
You have to say it properly, like it
and subscribe.
Thank you. Alright, you heard it, man. Cool, mate. So sorry about the wind noise every now and then there, but you know, it's as raw as it can be, right? This is my true experience. This is what I would do if I was out trying to call my friend. So you just experience something that, you know, is not staged. It's just a normal call. But to hear that from my mate, that the iPhone is sounding a little bit more natural on the receiver's end, is really good news for me. I have to say, and I don't know if you could notice it on YouTube, but he sounded less digitized as well for me through the iPhone in comparison with the S23 Ultra. You know, that was my experience at my end as well. So I know these external shots are not as clinical as the shots that I can do here in the studio, but the reason I like to do this, despite all the hard work that goes behind it, is because I find that actually going out and using the phone in normal ways like you would invariably leads to me discovering things that I wouldn't if I was just sat here at my desk. I know I've been teasing with some shots here, but I'll show you a proper comparison in a moment, which is very interesting as well. But I know that you may really care about ProRes at the moment because, you know, it's so accessible now. So I think it's really important to share this here. Basically, when I was out testing these phones, I realized that there are huge problems with some of the SSDs. And when I say huge problems, I mean, you know, you could end up with dropped frames, stuttery footage. You know, it could basically ruin your days, right, if you use one of these lower discs, especially if you're recording at the max quality, which is 4K 60. I couldn't find anything on Apple's website about, you know, the minimum requirements for recording externally, but here's what I found myself in my tests. The Samsung T7 may well be good enough, for example, to transfer files from the iPhone and everything, and it'll be plenty good enough for 4K 24 or even 4K 30, didn't see any issues there, but it will definitely not be good enough for ProRes 4K 60. Actually, even a basic test on my computer would have told me that, but you know, I don't really do benchmarks, but in this situation, I thought it was important. In my actual recording testing outdoors, sometimes I got decent, definitely very smooth 60 frames per second footage, as you can see here, but most of the time I got these huge stutters which will basically just, you know, like I said, ruin your day, right? So be very careful on the SSD that you choose. I then tested 4K 60 ProRes with this Western Digital one, which is a little bit faster, a bit more expensive as well, and the results were very encouraging. I'll be doing more testing on this though, but I know that a lot of YouTubers have done exactly the same that I just mentioned. They just kind of do a few seconds and that's okay. It records ProRes, brilliant. And it is brilliant. You know, it's like plug and play. There's nothing to install on the iPhone. That's fantastic. But I don't want to make you go out and spend a lot of money for no reason, right? If you're not recording 4K 60, please don't bother, right? 4K 24, 4K 30 is actually okay on the T7. So I think it's going to be good to test for extended period as well, because, you know, sometimes SSDs work in a way that, you know, if they get hot, they underperform as well. They throttle, you know, there's a lot that goes on when you're doing lots of things in a continuous period of time. You know, if you're doing like little bursts here and there, it might be okay. But if you're doing maybe 5 minutes at a time or even a longer period, like half an hour, yeah, SSDs will, you know, they need to be properly tested. So I'll definitely be doing that. I've already done a video on SSDs this year, but it needs an update. So stay tuned for that. You know, I could make my life easier and just show you a lovely top-down view of the iPhone, you know, in pristine lighting, and probably even prove to you that, yay, you can shoot ProRes, brilliant, you know, and not be here at 1 AM. But it was only being outdoors and pushing the limits, you know, shooting for several hours, you know, over a few days that I came across the issues. So I feel like I've done my job here on this one. If I help one person not spend money on something that is gonna break or not work, then my job here is done. Right, the cameras. Most of the time, I really enjoyed both. I mean, they're really, really lovely phones. You really can't go wrong with buying any of them, right? But there are times when it can be very hit and miss. Sometimes the phone kind of struggles to focus on something that's either in a slightly low light or too close or maybe too far. It's frustrating because I know I can get some awesome shots with both phones, but there are times that it could be flowers, it could be something with a reflective surface. Some of these objects in these different scenes can really mess up with the phones, but not in the same way, which is really weird. If you look at my sunglasses here in these shots, for example, it was a massive struggle to get the S23 Ultra to focus. I think it was impossible actually. Equally, I was trying to get this shot of the AirTag, and the iPhone this time couldn't focus on the Apple logo of all things, right? But in point and shoot scenarios, it's almost like, you know, you can flip a coin, there's no difference. But there are times, especially when you try to zoom into things, that the S23 Ultra kind of smokes the iPhone, right? We all know that. But in well-lit situations, they're both fantastic. When you go into RAW Max on the iPhone or Expert RAW on the S23 Ultra, yeah, this is where the magic happens. If you like to get creative with your shots and maybe not rely so much on those Instagram filters that everyone uses, yeah, Expert RAW and RAW Max is just insane, really. Talking about filters, actually, I'm loving recording videos with this ND filter. This is from Sunmark. I'm not sponsored or anything. Not only does it help with your exposure of the shot, but it gives you that cinematic 180-degree shutter rule, right? Where you, if you're recording at 30 frames per second, then your shutter should be at 1/60th. Basically lets you add a natural motion blur, which is really hard to do on smartphones, and it will remove some of the digitized kind of over-sharpened look that you get sometimes on smartphone videos. The videos out of these phones though are getting better and better, but with something like this, it does take it up a notch, you know? And talking about cinematic, let's talk about cinematic mode versus portrait video. I haven't done a lot of research on this one, but it felt like the right, you know, like for like. And also, like I said earlier, there are situations where the S23 Ultra absolutely smokes the iPhone. Take this portrait shot here of the Apple Watch Ultra, for example. Both in video and still, I think the S23 Ultra did a much better job here in sort of the edge detection. You know, can you see the top of the watch here? The iPhone seems to have no clue what's going on. But in other situations like this flower here, the S23 Ultra completely messed up and is like, you know, he didn't realize what was going on there either. And look, I don't mean to sound melodramatic, but to get this video to you, I had to work really late, past 1 AM, and I still have to do this edit as well. So I'm sorry if the edit isn't as good as my usual with lots of, you know, kind of animations and graphics. But just a reminder really to like and share this video with a friend or your WhatsApp group or whatever, if you find this video useful, of course. And have a look at the channel as well. If you like my stuff, it would be awesome if you subscribed. I did a few slow motion shots as well, which can be fantastic for any video production. So in good lighting, both will look fantastic. I mean, they are to die for, almost, you know, as good as a professional camera. But when you get in the shade, sort of early evening, yeah, you start to get a lot of noise in your image. You know, you can see these grainy bits here, especially if you look at the detail in the darker areas. But let me know what you think. You know, do you even care about slow motion? Talking about low light, a bit of an interesting one here. I had a mixed experience, right? I think if you ignore the horrible lens glare that you get on the iPhone here, I mean, they said they improved it, but you know, it's still there. If you ignore that though, the iPhone image is actually quite pleasing to the eye in my opinion, and quite a bit better as well in this situation. That's to my taste. And remember, this is without changing any settings. This was, you know, standard point and shoot, you know, out of the main camera in 4K 30. I really like, you know, video on iPhones. I mean, it can never go wrong, right? For many years, that's always been the case. Samsung really caught up with it. I mean, the S23 Ultra, it was the first phone from another non-iPhone that I realized, okay, you know, we're getting serious on video here on Samsung devices. Now, for an extreme example, almost like pointless low lighting video, but you know, you might find it useful. And I was trying to capture the moon here, which, you know, looked incredible tonight. I know I can just go to NASA and download an image, but you know, I wanted to try the shot, and honestly, this is more of a party trick than anything else, right? But I bet if you use a tripod and correct settings, you can actually do proper astrophotography with both of these phones. I've seen some pretty cool, like, professional astrophotographers out there using the iPhone to test it and the S23 Ultra. Yeah, and what they come up with is, yeah, way better than what I could ever produce. In my defense, I don't have the skies here, all the skills. One of the things that we didn't really cover in round one was the performance of the A17 Pro versus Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 here on the S23 Ultra. I have to say, I haven't really noticed any lags. I mean, what I've found a little bit, I mean, there's some minute things, especially after using only Android for the last 7-8 months. It's been very interesting really, because I've used iPhones before, right? But it just feels a little bit slow, and it's not that the phone is slow, it's just the animations, sometimes even typing. But I think that's more of a feel than the performance itself. Playing games, all the games that I can play, you know, right, the AAA games that Apple promised are still not available, but all the games that I can play have been pretty stable actually. No issues there. I do think it's out of this world what we can do with both these devices, but you know, what we can push through them is amazing. It's easier right now though to test the S23 Ultra because you can run an external monitor and several multiple apps index. You know, there's quite a lot of things that you can do on the S23 Ultra that will push the processor. With the iPhone, I think we'll still need to see, you know, if these AAA games will show us really what the A17 Pro is capable of. But right now it's not that different to any iPhones before. And sure, it would be great to be able to plug the iPhone into a large display and, you know, get my PS5 controller, connect to it via Bluetooth and enjoy console games, right? Like Resident Evil or whatever. But I don't know, most of the time I'm not gaming. You know, most of the time for me, I want to be useful with my devices. You know, I've got my business to run, emails to respond to. You know, sometimes I just want to get out of jail quickly and, you know, plugging in my Fold or my S23 Ultra into a monitor, running Microsoft Office via Dex, you know, without having to install that on my Mac. You know, and that contrast between these two phones, to me, exemplifies really, you know, the key difference really between having a raw power versus knowing what to do with it. For the standard non-gaming situations, let's face it, even the iPhone 12 is still good enough, right? Having said that, I know it's early days, but the experience so far has been way better than the 14 Pro Max experience, right? That, to me anyway, the 14 Pro Max was terrible. And you gotta appreciate the little things too. I mean, they look little, but I know behind the scenes, there's a lot of computational power. You know, for example, I did get a bit of a kick out of, you know, seeing cinematic video live, choosing what to focus on. It's like, okay, this is cool, especially when it does so accurately. You know, and the same goes for live photos and changing your focus later. Some of that we could do on Android too, but you know, that's a good example of putting the processing power to use. And for me, call me old-fashioned, but I think we need to see more of that outside of the camera world. Otherwise, we may as well just call the iPhone like a smart camera. and call everything else a smartphone. My preference right now is still very much with the S23 Ultra. I called this out months ago anyway. It would take a monumental effort from Apple to kind of sway me back into having an iPhone as my main device. They'd have to make something really special for me, or, you know, as awesome as the S23 Ultra. But I couldn't say you could go wrong with an iPhone either, right? The iPhone 15 Pro Max is an incredible phone, and for the right situation, for the right, you know, if you're already in the ecosystem, you don't want to change, you know, you do an upgrade, it's a beautiful phone, just don't sit on it. But one question that I'm getting a lot is, how does it compare with the Fold 5 as well? You know what I'm gonna say, right? That's coming. Let's find out that in the next videos. And the 2 watches, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, that's coming too. And while you wait for those videos, let's catch up over here in one of these videos. See you soon.